Welcome to CEO Confidential from Frank Pagano and Pierangelo Soldavini.
And welcome also from me. Today we are talking about marketing and leadership.
And we have the pleasure, the honor to have with us today two superstars, Sherilyn and Mark. Welcome to the show. First question, who are you? What do you do for a living?
Okay, I'm Sherilyn Shackell, so I'm the founder and the CEO of the Marketing Academy. We operate in Europe, in the States and in Australia, and we are developing the talent within our industry to be exceptional leaders.
And ciao, my name is Mark Ritson. I work a lot with Sherilyn over the years, but I used to be a marketing professor for 25 years. I finished last year and now I run my own online programs called the Mini MBA in Marketing from Australia.
Welcome both. We're going to start with marketing, exactly like Pierangelo said. Mark, question for you. What is the role of brands today versus yesterday?
I'm maybe the best or the worst guy to answer that question. The role of brands has not changed in more than 1,000 years. We are full of unfortunate idiots who will exaggerate the nature of human change. The reality of human consumers is they are not changing in the nature of the way they think and the nature in the way they make decisions and in the nature of the way that brands work and don't work upon them. Clearly, there are different tactics emerging all the time. You know, in the last 18 months, TikTok has appeared. There will always be new tactics, but the way that consumers decide and think and feel and the general way that brands work upon them remains the same, which in a nutshell is two things. Brands make life easier for us. They save us time. And brands also add meaning to our lives by standing for things. And when we choose to buy certain brands over other brands, we make a decision which reflects on ourselves to identity and to others in terms of signaling. So that phenomenon has been the same for 1,000 years and it will remain the same. Brands are at the center of how consumers decide.
Mark, but if the model of decision of the consumer is the same, is the role of advertising changing today relative to yesterday? And in a special way, is there still a cult of performance advertising?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's certainly true that we're learning more about how advertising should and shouldn't work. And I think we are seeing maybe a change in the next 10 years reacting to a change that happened in the last 10 years. So the last 10 years are notable because we got more and more short term, as you noticed. Our focus on very targeted, performance-based ROI communication, one-to-one personalization. That was the big emphasis. And of course, digital media. And that all pointed towards us being very, very short term about the way we do things and always using return on investment. As we get to the start of this new decade, what we're realizing is return on investment is quite a stupid calculation. It looks smart until you scratch the surface of it. And actually, what return on investment does for most companies is it pushes them to be too short term. What digital communications does is it pushes them to be too short term. And so what we've seen over the last 10 years, and there's lots of good data, is that the timeline, the horizon of brand planning and marketing is reducing. But there is hope now that we're starting to look more again at long-term brand building, balancing out the short term. Not because it's a nice thing, not because it's advertising, but because that makes you more money. And the great irony of every company that is obsessed with ROI, that is obsessed with digital metrics, that is obsessed with proving success, is they're making less money than if they broadened out their view and combined the long and the short together. So I have some hope that we will get better at longer term communication in the decade that comes.
Yes, and in this long-term perspective, we have to take into account that communication today is shared and open source in the digital media. How can you do a good storytelling today?
Yeah, it's tricky. I have an extreme point of view, which is you must see social media very differently from digital media. What is the difference? Social media is what we started out with Facebook and with Twitter, I guess we could say around 15 years ago. And there was a myth that began that you could have organic social media. You could create a buzz around brands, a conversation with consumers rather than a conversation to consumers. For the most part, I find that whole argument to be bullshit. There are one or two brands. Yeah, we saw it with the Canberry juice and the guy on the skateboard a couple of months ago on TikTok. So every now and again, something bubbles up, Oreo cookies. Someone has a huge hit on organic social media and everyone talks about it. But that's like winning the lottery. 1 in a million brands get that. And the rest of the organic conversation, interactive bullshit is just that. Social media, as the name suggests, is a media for people talking to other people about people. It works for celebrities. It works for individuals. It even works for professors. But it doesn't work very well for brands. In fact, digital media is, say it quietly, not that different from traditional media in the sense that we have digital display, we have digital video, and they look a lot like outdoor print and TV advertising, albeit with a few little tweaks. So I'm not a big fan of this idea that we're going to have a conversation with customers, that it's all very organic. I think it's overstated, like personalization, like brand purpose. It's a large amount of bullshit and very little else.
Yes, and another question for Mark, I suppose. As we build the new 4Ps, integrating new tech and circularity in a period of crisis, who is going to swallow the price burden premium? Is it the shareholders or the consumers?
Again, a very good question. I think what you're seeing is an interesting situation with price right now. There's certainly a lot of pressure around the way we present prices. But if you actually look at the prices being paid, in many cases, consumers are now paying more than ever before. There's an illusion of price, an illusion that things are cheaper, when in reality, I think still there's a lot of value in the marketplace and certainly lower cost as well. So I don't think either party has to bear the costs of this new pricing environment. I think there's always room to make a good margin now as much as ever. And I think everyone can enjoy that. I think probably the biggest loser is likely to be the companies that aren't able to adapt, who will lose market share and lose margin. They're the ones, their shareholders will suffer. I think there's always good profits to be made for the companies and the shareholders who do the smart thing.
We shift gears and we go to you, Sherilyn, a slice of your life. You created the Marketing Academy, amazing institution. As you went through it, have you ever felt alone in self-doubt? How did you make a decision during tough times?
I've never felt alone, ever. And I do think that alone is a state of mind. I've very often been on my own, but I've never felt alone because I've the one thing about the Academy is that it's full of amazing people. I mean, we've got 1,500 people around the world. They're all incredible. They're all much wiser and more experienced than I am. And so if I've ever had any kind of doubt, I know I can reach out to any of them at any time. You know, we're all about generosity and giving, and they're all generous, you know, giving people. I have had moments of self-doubt. It doesn't last long. I'm going to be really honest. I was very, very fortunate that my mother was a businesswoman, which was unusual. I'm 55, so we're talking quite a long time ago in my childhood. And it was unusual to have, you know, the female of the family be the business owner, and she was. And she brought me up by telling me that I was capable of absolutely anything and everything. And quite frankly, I believed her. And I often think that who we are is based in our childhood and the experiences that we had in our childhood. And, you know, my mother had so much confidence in me. I was unlikely to grow up with anything other than confidence in myself. So I've never really doubted. I've had to make some pretty tough decisions over the times. And for me, I'm not somebody that is adverse to risk. So I don't need all of the data at hand in order to de-risk my decision making. I guess I'm slightly attracted to risk. I suppose lots of entrepreneurs are, but I will often check myself on when I'm making decisions, because for me, it's always a combination of heart, head, and gut, really. So, and I need to be very aware of what's driving me when I make decisions, and check the other areas. So, you know, the head, do I have the rationale? Do I have, you know, some of the information that I need? The heart, what emotions are showing up for me? And then my gut is what's my instinct telling me and why. And so long as I check that those three things are in balance, and you know, I've asked myself holistically what I feel the answer should be, and then I go and talk to people like Mark and say, I'm thinking making this decision, Mark, what do you think? Then I'm always happy with the decision I make, and actually I'm at peace even if it's the wrong one, because, you know, I've made it for the right reasons at the right time.
Thank you very much, Sherilyn. A brutal question, if I can. You see so many executives at the Marketing Academy. Let's be honest, are C-rooms ready for the challenges of the future? Take new technologies or sustainability, yes or not?
Some are. Some are. I don't think any of them are completely ready. Look, we're just about to go into another whole era that's going to require, you know, lots more capability, specifically around leadership. And we're coming out of, you know, one of the most brutal times that any C-suite has had to lead through in decades. And many leaders in C-suite may not have led through any kind of real crisis like this before. So they're having to flex and test new muscles, really. So, you know, I think that there's so much coming through from tech and, you know, AI, and then the call from the consumers that there needs to be a higher purpose and more meaning in what everybody does. And then you've got sustainability and, you know, all those things coming in means that the leadership capability at C-suite is going to need to step up in a big way. And there are some fabulous leaders out there, but there are also ones that are still on the learning curve. You know, and unless they really embrace that leadership capability, they don't need to be experts at anything. You know, we can get hold of futurists that can tell us what they think the future looks like, right? But, you know, the normal person in the C-suite hasn't got, you know, a crystal ball to know what's coming down the line for them. But if they tap into leadership capability, you know, if they listen, if they're curious, if they're really flexible, if they're comfortable with ambiguity, if they're not too risk averse, so they'll test new things. If failure is okay within their culture, so they can test new things and see what works. You know, those are the things that are going to get the C-suite through, I think, in the future.
Sherilyn, another question, and you may get this question over and over again, and feel free to send me away. Do you have any tips for young ladies watching this that would like to become a CEO tomorrow or a leaders?
Well, look, so as a female in business, I'm really lucky in that I've never really seen gender. Again, going back to my childhood, my mum was the businesswoman and my father was the stay-at-home dad. So I experienced a role reversal almost from birth in terms of the typical gender stereotypes. So I was brought up believing that I was capable of anything and that my gender had absolutely nothing to do with it. So personally, it's never been a thing. I've never looked for it, and therefore, because I've never looked for it, I've not experienced it personally. However, I work with a huge number of women. Our industry is actually fabulous in terms of bringing in and nurturing women. So our scholarship programs around the world, and we've got 580 alumni of that program, 65% of those are female. And at our fellowship program, which is the CMO program, it's exclusively for CMOs, developing them to become CEOs, it's about a 50-50 split. So the advice that I would say to any young woman coming in is, first and foremost, get out of your own way. You know, that it's the beliefs that you hold about yourself that are going to take you through, not what other people think and feel about you. That's their business. You know, that's their issue, and that's theirs to deal with. So long as you know in your heart of hearts that every single day you're being the best version of yourself you can possibly be, your gender won't factor. You know, so we need to get out of our way and to absolutely know that leadership spot, that top spot, you know, that hasn't got a gender written on the back of the seat. That's about how ambitious you are for it, how much you want to sacrifice for it. And it can be a sacrifice. You know, women who want families and that want to be at home with their families find it hard to have it all. I believe it's possible. I believe I've found a balance to kind of have it all, but it's not common and it's harder. So you just need to accept, you know, what are you prepared to sacrifice to get to the top? How hard are you prepared to work? How much of your voice will you use? You know, how much will you allow your inner voice to destabilize you? Because we're our worst inner critic. Women are absolutely the worst at talking ourselves down inside of our heads. But you know, it's our voices, and so long as it's our voices, we can do something about that. So you know, don't get in your way. You know, you can soar all the way, and your gender is not necessarily going to factor in it. Although I have to say that female leadership and the female attributes work brilliantly for the kind of leadership that we need today. You know, we are nurturers. We lead from the heart more often than from the head, which is flipped to the opposite in men. We are more compassionate. You just got to look at Jacinda in New Zealand. I mean, who for me is the epitome of fantastic leadership. She happens to be a woman. And all of the attributes that she brings to that leadership role, I believe, are the best of female attributes. So, you know, we're the ones that should be taking over the C-suites without a doubt. So don't get in your own way.
Mark, Sherilyn, now a question for both of you, because I suppose that you have a different approach for this. You cited many times leadership, and the world today needs leadership from many points of view. What is leadership for you, and who is the leader? Sherilyn, please.
Oh, sorry, Sherilyn, you go first.
Well, look, we've got a definition of leadership within the Marketing Academy. So it is our belief that if you are in a position of influence over anybody in your life, you're already a leader. So to us, maybe controversially, leadership is not about what job you hold. It's not about being in a position of power or authority. It's not a job title that starts with chief and ends in director. If you've got influence over other people in your life, if you've got influence over the decisions they make or the choices they take, or you've got influence over how well they're thinking, you know, how empowered they feel, how inspired they feel, then you're already a leader. And that's anybody in an organization at any level. People management is different. You know, managers, you know, manage people to achieve a result, you know, based on, you know, the right budget, the right timescale, the right process, and that's a different thing. but leadership for us is having an influence. And it's one of the reasons why we created the Marketing Academy within our industry, because we're of the belief that marketing, media, and advertising at its best can change the citizens of the planet. Because we are the ones that outreach, we're the ones that are sending the messages, we're the ones that are influencing the way in which people behave. So our industry and the function of marketing is possibly the most powerful leadership function in all, across the board. But, the leadership behind it, the why we do what we do, the morals that we use, the ethics that we use, that's all vitally important. So that's my view on leadership. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I'm very, very conservative on leadership. I get, and I think I would defer to Sherilyn on this question, but it doesn't stop me having my say. I think leadership is two things. I think, first of all, it's making the right decision, and then second, getting everyone to follow you. And there's lots of talk of empathy and emotion and all these softer values, which are important. What I've seen firsthand